When I first met Claire, she was the embodiment of everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful, charismatic, and fiercely independent, she walked into my life like a summer storm, unexpected and impossible to ignore. I was the quiet guy with a steady job and a penchant for stability. A senior project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, I liked order. Claire, she was chaos. The good kind at first. We were married within 2 years of meeting, and for a while, I thought I had won the lottery. She brightened my days, pulling me out of my comfortable routines and showing me how to live a little. Our friends called us a perfect match, the fire and the rock. But as time went on, I started noticing things, small things. Late nights at her job that didn't make sense, hushed conversations in the corner of the house when she thought I wasn't listening, and the ever-present glow of her phone that seemed to occupy her more than I ever did. I told myself I was imagining it. I loved her too much to believe otherwise, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Claire was cheating. It wasn't a suspicion anymore, it was a fact. I found out on a cold January night when she forgot to close her email tab on our shared laptop. I'll never forget the sinking feeling in my stomach as I read through thread after thread of her conversations with him. James. The guy was everything I wasn't. Flashy, rich, and reckless. Claire didn't even bother hiding her feelings in those messages. I can't stand being with him anymore, she wrote, referring to me, the man who loved her. He's boring. All he cares about is work and saving for the future. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, feeling the life I had built crumble around me. But when the anger came, a slow, simmering fury, I didn't lash out. I didn't scream. Instead, I promised myself one thing. I would not let her win. The next morning, I kissed her goodbye like nothing had happened. I told her I'd be home late from work. I played my role to perfection, masking the betrayal eating at me from the inside. I needed time to think, time to plan, and most importantly, time to prepare for what was coming. I hired a private investigator that same day. I wanted proof, real, irrefutable proof, that would blow her lies apart. It took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of stomach-churning updates from the PI, pictures of Claire and James at hotels, dinners, and even in our car. I felt like a fool. The house we lived in, the car we drove, I paid for it all while she played me for a chump. But I wasn't going to be a fool for long. When I confronted Claire, I kept it calm, clinical almost. She came home late one night smelling like his cologne, and I was sitting at the kitchen table with a file folder of evidence in front of me. We need to talk, I said quietly. She froze, her coat half off. About what? I slid the photos across the table. This! Her face drained of color as she flipped through them, the facade cracking in real time. You were spying on me? She hissed, her voice sharp with indignation as if she were the victim. I deserve the truth, I replied evenly. How long? Does it matter? She snapped. You're not exactly innocent here, you know. You're cold. You're boring. You stopped caring about me a long time ago. I've been working myself to the bone to give us a life, I said, my voice rising for the first time. But you're right about one thing, Claire. This marriage is over. Her eyes narrowed. Fine, if that's what you want. But don't think you're walking away clean. I've talked to my lawyer, and I'm going to get everything I deserve out of this. I stared at her, a cold smile creeping onto my lips. She had no idea. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Claire came for me like a shark in bloodied water. She wanted the house, the car, half my savings, and monthly alimony. Her lawyer was slick, aggressive, and seemed to think they were untouchable. To Claire, this wasn't just about money. It was about winning, about proving she could destroy me and walk away laughing. For a while, it looked like she would. She played the part of the abandoned wife beautifully, crying on cue and painting me as the cold, neglectful husband who had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. I couldn't stand it, but I kept quiet, letting my lawyer do his job. And then, the day of the final hearing came. Claire sat across the courtroom, smug and radiant, as though she had already won. Her lawyer delivered a polished closing statement about how she deserved financial support, to maintain the lifestyle she had become accustomed to. Claire's eyes gleamed as she looked at me. "You lose," they seemed to say. But then it was my turn. My lawyer stood up, holding a slim manila folder. "Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence to submit." Claire's brow furrowed. Her lawyer shot us a look of disbelief. "What is this?" My lawyer smiled faintly. "Bank statements, private investigator reports, and, most importantly, proof that Mrs. Thompson committed fraud during the marriage." The room went silent. "Fraud?" the judge asked, leaning forward. My lawyer nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Over the past 2 years, Mrs. Thompson has been funneling money from the joint marital accounts into a separate secret account in her name. Funds intended for mortgage payments and household expenses were redirected without Mr. Thompson's knowledge. We also have evidence of significant gifts and wire transfers to a third party, a man named James Richards." Claire's face went white. Her lawyer looked like he had been punched in the gut. I finally spoke, my voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, my wife didn't just betray me. She stole from me. She lied. And while I tried to build a life for us, she built a secret life for herself." The judge's gavel came down hard. "We'll take a recess while I review this evidence." Claire shot up from her seat, whispering frantically to her lawyer. I sat back, watching the panic spread across her face. She thought she could take everything from me? She underestimated me. When the judge returned, the outcome was swift and devastating for Claire. Not only was her alimony request denied, but the judge ordered her to repay half the money she had siphoned from our accounts. She was also slapped with a financial misconduct ruling, which meant her share of our remaining assets was slashed in half. In the end, she walked away with far less than she had expected. James, of course, was nowhere to be found. As we left the courtroom, Claire tried to corner me in the hallway. Her face was a mask of fury and desperation. "You planned this, didn't you?" she spat. "You set me up." I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "You did this to yourself, Claire. Actions have consequences." She opened her mouth to say something else, but I walked away. For the first time in months, I felt free. I sold the house. It was too full of bad memories to keep. I bought a small, quiet place on the outskirts of town and started over. It wasn't easy. Divorce never is. But every time I thought about how Claire had tried to ruin me, I smiled, knowing she had underestimated me every step of the way. The last I heard, she had moved into a tiny apartment and was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. James, it seemed, had dropped her the second the money dried up. As for me, I'm doing better than ever. The freedom that comes with knowing you survived the worst someone could do to you is intoxicating. Claire thought she had won. She thought she could humiliate me, take everything I had, and walk away unscathed. But I played the long game, and in the end, I walked away with my dignity, my future, and the satisfaction of knowing she got exactly what she deserved. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold.